When Axl Rose returned to his old recording studio in Hollywood, he expected to find memories of his beginnings in rock, of those endless nights composing songs that would change his life. What he didn't expect was to find Bill, the same janitor who used to open the studio doors at 3 in the morning so he could rehearse when he had no money, still cleaning the hallways at 80 years old. The discovery left the legendary Guns N' Roses frontman perplexed. While most people in Axl's position would have offered a handshake, perhaps an autograph, and moved on with their day, Axl's reaction to seeing his elderly mentor still working triggered a chain of events that no one could have anticipated. What began as a simple, nostalgic visit would transform not only the lives of Bill and his wife Sharon, but also Axl's and, ultimately, that of an entire community. The question wasn't whether Axl would help his old mentor, but how far he would be willing to go to repay a debt of gratitude forged over decades. No one, not even Bill himself, could have predicted what Axl Rose would do next. Axl Rose's black Porsche parked in front of the old red brick building on Sunset Boulevard. The afternoon sun filtered through the palm trees as he remained in the car for a moment, hands still on the steering wheel. "Are you sure you want to do this?" his assistant asked from the passenger seat. Axl nodded. "Sometimes you have to go back to where it all began to understand who you really are." He got out of the car, noticing how his knees ached at 62. He was no longer the wild vocalist who jumped around the stage for hours, but he still moved with that defiant attitude that had defined him. He adjusted his red bandana and sunglasses, pulling them a little lower on his nose. Maybe they wouldn't recognize him right away. Perhaps he could first let himself be enveloped by the memories. The main entrance had been modernized since his days there, with automatic glass doors and a bright LED sign, but the building's structure remained intact. Axl pushed the door and entered. The lobby smelled of freshly brewed coffee and wood varnish. A young receptionist, wearing headphones, looked up from her computer and greeted him with a polite gesture without recognizing him. "Can I help you?" Axl smiled slightly. "I just want to have a look around. I used to record here years ago." The girl nodded indifferently. "The rooms are on the second floor. Go ahead." Axl climbed the stairs slowly, letting each step return fragments of his past. He ran his fingers along the metal railing, the same one he had touched hundreds of times in the 80s when he ran up with his guitar on his shoulder. The second-floor hallway was silent. The doors had new numbers, but the layout was the same. He stopped in front of room number 7. That had been his room. Songs like Sweet Child O' Mine and Paradise City had been born there, amid screams, alcohol, and a wild energy that seemed inexhaustible. He turned the handle and entered. The room was empty, with acoustic panels on the walls, a couple of amplifiers stacked in a corner, and cables coiled on the floor. He closed his eyes and for an instant heard Slash's torn chords, Steven's furious drum beats, his own voice destroying itself in every note. The smell hit him too, that mixture of wood, sweat, and electricity that defines all recording studios in the world. "Some things never change," he murmured to himself. The room wasn't completely empty. In the back, near a window, there was an acoustic guitar leaning against the wall and an empty whiskey bottle on the windowsill. Axl smiled. Someone else was also reliving old habits. He walked around the room, touching the walls as if they were sacred. This was the place where he had fought with his band over the direction of an album. This was the place where he had cried in frustration when a song didn't come out the way he wanted. This was the place where he had promised himself he would never give up, no matter how many times the world tried to silence him. He was so absorbed in his thoughts that he almost didn't notice the elderly man cleaning the hallway with a mop. There was something about the way he moved, careful, methodical, proud of his work, that seemed familiar. Axl watched him for a moment. The old man wore a gray uniform with the studio logo embroidered on the pocket. His back was slightly hunched and his hair, completely white, shone under the fluorescent lights. He moved slowly but with determination, making sure no corner went uncleaned. "Excuse me," Axl said as he approached. The old man looked up, squinting. "Is this about a room reservation, sir?" he asked in a measured voice. "No, I'm just visiting. I used to record here a long time ago," Axl replied. The janitor nodded. "Many musicians come to visit. You must have been here in the good times." "Class of '87, Axl commented. "'87, the old man repeated, whistling. "Those were wild years. I was already working here then. Axl stared at him, looking past the wrinkles and white hair. Bill, is that you? The janitor tilted his head, studying Axl's face. Do I know you, son? I'm Axl. Axl Rose. Bill's eyes opened wide. He leaned his mop against the wall and took a step toward him. The wild redhead? Is it really you? Axl smiled. Not so red anymore, but yes, it's me. Bill let out a halting laugh. Axl Rose, here in person. He hesitated for a moment and then extended his hand. Sorry for not recognizing you right away. The eyes aren't what they used to be. Instead of shaking his hand, Axl hugged him. Bill felt fragile in his arms, like a bird. As they separated, Axl noticed that the janitor's eyes filled with tears. I can't believe you're still working here, Bill. It's been over 30 years. Bill nodded. 37 next month. 37 years cleaning these hallways. Bill replied with a hint of pride. 80 years old, Axl repeated, unable to hide his astonishment. And you're still working full-time? I have nowhere else to go, Bill replied with a slight shrug. And this place still needs someone to take care of it. Axl looked at the man who had worked silently all those years. He remembered how Bill used to open the studio at 3 in the morning so he could rehearse when he had no money to pay for official hours. How he stayed late without complaining when Axl wanted just 5 more minutes to finish a song. How he offered words of encouragement on days when nothing seemed to go right. Do you remember how you let me in after hours to rehearse? Axl asked. Bill's face lit up. Of course I do. You were always the first to arrive and the last to leave. I'd never seen anyone work so hard. I almost had to kick you out so I could go home for dinner. My wife Sharon would get so angry if I came home late. Axl smiled at the memory. But it was worth it, wasn't it? Bill noted, looking at Axl with pride. Look at you now. You filled stadiums all over the world. In the distance, the sound of an electric guitar could be heard from another room. Someone else was chasing their dreams in that same building. I need to finish up here, Bill said as he picked up his mop. I have to clean the bathrooms before my shift ends. What time do you finish? Axl asked. Around 6. Do you think we could catch up when you're done? Maybe grab some dinner. Bill looked surprised by the invitation. You want to have dinner with me? Axl, you don't have important people to see. Bill, Axl replied firmly. Right now you're the most important person I want to see. The janitor's eyes wrinkled into a smile. Well, in that case I accept, but nothing fancy. These old bones don't settle well in luxurious chairs anymore. I know the perfect place, Axl said. I'll meet you at the main entrance at 6. As Axl walked down the stairs, his mind buzzed with memories. Bill had always seemed older to his 20-something eyes, but now the man was 80 years old and still pushing a mop through the hallways. Something about that didn't sit right with him. By the time he reached his car, Axl Rose, the man known for his explosive temper and obsessive perfectionism on stage, had made a decision. He didn't know exactly what he would do yet, but he had one certainty. Bill's life was about to change. At the main entrance, exactly at 6 o'clock, Axl waited leaning against his car. He had spent the last hour making calls, canceling a photo shoot for a magazine, and rescheduling a meeting with his lawyer. Some things were more important than business. At 6:15, the doors opened, and Bill came out shuffling his feet. He had changed from his work uniform into a plaid button-down shirt and khaki pants that hung somewhat loose on his thin frame. Sorry to keep you waiting, Bill said. The manager wanted to chat when he saw me leaving all dressed up. No problem, Axl replied. My car is here. Bill's eyes widened when he saw the Porsche. The fanciest thing I've ever ridden in was my brother-in-law's Buick at my mother-in-law's funeral, he commented. Axl opened the passenger door, and as they drove through Hollywood, Bill pointed out changes in the city. New buildings where dive bars used to be, old record stores that had closed, and the movie theater where he used to take Sharon on dates, now converted into a luxury gym. I was thinking we could eat at Barney's Beanery, Axl said. Is it still open? Bill's face lit up. Of course. It's been there since the 20s. You remember that place? The best chili dogs in town, Axl commented with a smile. We used to go after rehearsing all night. If you've made it this far and you're enjoying this story, leave a comment telling me what you think. Barney's Beanery looked exactly as he remembered it. walls covered with license plates, worn wooden tables, and the smell of beer and hamburgers floating in the air. Axl and Bill sat at a table in the back. A middle-aged waitress approached, stopping short when she recognized Axl. "Oh my God, is that you?" she stammered. Axl nodded politely. "Yes, ma'am. Could you bring us 2 menus?" The waitress hurried away, murmuring to her colleagues, and soon the entire restaurant began casting discreet glances toward their table. "Sorry about that," Axl commented to Mr. Bill. "Sometimes it happens." Bill laughed. "It must be strange to be recognized wherever you go." "You get used to it," Axl replied. "But enough about me. I want to know about you, Bill. All these years at the studio, that's dedication." The old man shrugged. "It's just a job. Someone has to keep the place in order." "But why are you still working at 80? Most people retire much earlier." Bill lowered his gaze, and his smile faded slightly. "Well, retirement is for those who can afford it, I suppose." Before Axl could ask more questions, the waitress returned with the menus and an appetite for destruction poster for Axl to sign. After ordering hamburgers and chili dogs, Axl resumed the conversation. "Tell me about your family, Bill." The old man's eyes lit up. "Well, my wife Sharon. We'll be married 56 years next month. I have 2 children, Marcus and Linda, who live in other cities now. 3 grandchildren and a great-grandson I haven't been able to meet yet." "That's wonderful," Axl commented. "I remember Sharon bringing you lunch sometimes. Even now, once a week, on Thursdays, she makes me turkey sandwiches with mustard." Bill laughed. "She jokes that she treats me like I'm still 40 years old." As they shared the meal, Axl asked more questions. He learned that Bill had started working at the studio in 1979, just a few years before Guns N' Roses formed. Before that, he had served in Vietnam and then worked at an assembly plant that closed in the 70s. "I never thought I'd end up being a janitor at a studio," Bill admitted, "but it turned out to be the best job I've ever had." "Why is that?" Axl asked. "Because I get to see people chase their dreams," Bill said as he bit into his hamburger. "Look, you went from being a skinny kid, hungry for success, to a rock legend." "I wasn't always a legend," Axl recalled. "There were nights I wanted to give up. I remember one of those nights," Bill said. "I found you sitting alone in room 7 after everyone had left." Axl put down his beer. "You remember?" "Of course I do. You were playing the same melody over and over on the guitar. You hadn't even turned on the lights. You could just hear the sound of the strings in the darkness." The memory flooded Axl. The frustration, the rage, the determination. "Do you know what you told me that day?" he asked. Bill thought for a moment. "I can't remember exactly." "You said, 'The greats aren't born great. They become great when everyone else gives up.' And then you handed me the keys to the studio and said, 'You can stay as long as you need. Just lock up when you're done.'" Bill's eyes wrinkled into a smile. "Look, I gave advice to Axl Rose. That meant more than you imagine," Axl said seriously. "It made me feel like I was worth something, even when I doubted myself." "You were always worth something," Bill replied. "And that's true for any kid who walks through those doors, whether they become famous or not." When they finished the meal, Axl insisted on paying. "Let me take you home," he said as they left the restaurant. Several people approached asking for autographs, but Axl was courteous and patient. Once he said goodbye to his admirers, he helped Bill get into the car. During the journey, they both traveled through the streets of Los Angeles, observing the changes in the city, the new skyscrapers, the old streets that were now full of tourists. Bill remembered a time when life was much simpler. Axl, in a calm voice, confessed, "I've been thinking about everything you sacrificed over these years. It pains me to know that despite everything you've given, you're still working day after day. Have you ever thought about resting? About letting others take care of you?" Bill, looking out the window, responded humbly, "Every day I get up because this job gives me purpose. But sometimes I wonder if it's time to change the routine, to enjoy a bit of what I've built." The conversation became deep and emotional. They remembered old times, anecdotes of bands that passed through the studio, first successes and those moments of struggle that had marked Axl's life. Upon arriving at Bill's modest house, located in a quiet neighborhood in North Hollywood. Axl helped him down. The house was small but well kept, with a front yard full of flowers that someone clearly tended with love. "Come in," Bill said. "Sharon will be delighted to meet you." Axl entered and found himself in a warm atmosphere. The walls were decorated with black and white photographs, memories of a long life full of love. There were photos of weddings, small children, graduations. Sharon appeared from the kitchen, leaning on a cane. She was a small woman with gray hair pulled back in a bun and bright eyes full of warmth. Seeing Axl, her face lit up. "So you're the famous Axl Rose," she said with a smile. "Bill has talked a lot about you over the years." Axl approached and gave her a gentle hug. "It's an honor to meet you, Mrs. Rose." Sharon looked at him tenderly. "Call me Sharon, please, and thank you for bringing my husband home safe and sound." That same day, after saying goodbye with a sincere hug, Axl felt inspired. He decided it was time to do something that honored Bill's long career. The next day, Axl organized meetings with old friends in the industry. He called Duff, producers he had worked with over the years. He told them Bill's story, how that man had been a fundamental piece in their beginnings, giving them space to create when they had no resources. Everyone responded enthusiastically. Within a week, Axl had organized a surprise event at the studio. He invited alumni of the place, musicians who had recorded there, technicians and members of the musical community who, like him, knew of Bill's impact on their lives. On the day of the event, Bill arrived at the studio, not knowing what to expect. Axl greeted him at the entrance and took him to the main hall, which was now decorated with lights and balloons. There, dozens of people were waiting for him with applause. On the walls were photographs of Bill over the years, cleaning, smiling, helping to carry equipment. There were videos of famous musicians who recorded thank you messages. They had all been helped by Bill at some point. Axl took the microphone and spoke with emotion. "Bill, you said your job was just to clean, but what you really did was take care of this place as if it were your home. And in doing so, you took care of us. You gave us space to create, to fail, to try again. Today we want to thank you." Then, Axl made an announcement that left everyone breathless. A group of musicians, producers, and friends had created a fund for Bill and Sharon. It was enough for Bill to retire with dignity, for Sharon to receive the medical care she needed, and for both to enjoy their golden years without financial worries. Bill, with tears running down his cheeks, hugged Axl. "I don't know what to say," he murmured. "You don't have to say anything," Axl replied. "I just want you to know that your kindness didn't go unnoticed. Never." Sharon, who was in the audience, cried with emotion. Her children, who had traveled from other cities to be present, hugged her tightly. That night, after the event, Axl and Bill sat in the empty studio in room number 7. Bill spoke softly. "I never imagined something like this could happen. I always thought my life would be simple, without great moments." Axl looked at him. "Bill, your life has been extraordinary. You don't need fame or fortune to leave a mark. You helped me when no one else did. And not just me, hundreds of people who passed through here. That's real greatness." Bill smiled. "Thank you, Axl, for reminding me that what I did mattered." Weeks later, Bill officially retired. On his last day of work, Axl accompanied him. Together they walked through the studio hallways, remembering stories, laughing, and also crying a little. As they left, Bill said goodbye to the building with a bow. "Thank you for everything, old friend," he said softly. Axl hugged him and said, "This isn't goodbye, Bill. It's see you later." Bill nodded. "See you later, son. And thank you for restoring my faith that good deeds always find their reward." Axl got into his car and stared at the building one last time that day. He understood that greatness is not measured only in records sold or stadiums filled, but in the ability to transform lives, to give back what was once received. Bill had given him hope when he needed it most. Now Axl had given him peace. And that, he thought as he started the engine, was the most valuable thing he could offer. If you've made it this far, subscribe to the channel to keep watching stories that truly inspire you. A girl with a broken heart's dream was to hear Sweet Child O' Mine live. Nobody thought he would come, but what he did that day changed everything forever. Room number 12 of the Pediatric Cardiology Hospital remained shrouded in silence, barely interrupted by the soft hum of machines monitoring each irregular heartbeat of Emma's heart. At 9 years old, the little girl had spent more time between white walls and the smell of disinfectant than in the parks where she should have been running. Her brown hair, which had once been long and shiny, now fell in thin strands on the pillow. Her green eyes, however, retained a sparkle that no illness had managed to extinguish. Robert, her father, sat in the chair by the window, watching as the evening light painted the light blue curtains orange. He had been a sound engineer in his best years, working at concerts and festivals, surrounded by music and energy. Now, all that world seemed to belong to another life, to another version of himself that existed before the words congenital heart disease became part of his daily vocabulary. Emma was born with a heart malformation that doctors described with complicated terms that Robert memorized without fully understanding. The only thing he knew for certain was that his daughter had fought from day one, surviving 3 surgeries before turning 6. And now, after countless treatments, transfusions, and nights when the heart monitor set off alarms that froze the blood, the doctors had told him the truth no parent wants to hear. We've done everything we can. The waiting list for a transplant was long, too long, and Emma's time was running out. However, Emma never spoke of her death. She didn't mention fear or sadness. Instead, she talked about music. Specifically, she talked about Guns N' Roses. She spoke of Axl Rose the way other children spoke of superheroes or cartoon characters. She had discovered the band by accident, one day when Robert played an old record in the car. From that moment, Sweet Child O' Mine became her song. She listened to it on repeat, memorized every word in English even though she didn't fully understand its meaning, and moved her fingers in the air, imitating Slash's famous guitar riff. "When I grow up, I'm going to sing like Axl," she would say with conviction, as if the future were something guaranteed. Robert never had the courage to tell her that perhaps there wouldn't be a "when I grow up." One April afternoon, as the hospital settled into that characteristic quietness of the shift change, Emma looked at her father with those eyes that seemed too wise for her age. "Dad," she said in a soft but firm voice, "if I could ask the universe for something, do you know what it would be?" Robert set down the book he was pretending to read and approached the bed. "What would it be, Princess?" "I'd like to see Axl Rose sing live. Just once. I'd like to be there, feeling the music, like when you tell me about your concerts. I'd like him to know that his music made me strong." Tears gathered in Emma's eyes, but they didn't fall. They never fell. It was as if she had decided long ago that she wasn't going to waste energy crying. Robert felt something break inside his chest. He wanted to promise her the world, but how could he promise something impossible? Axl Rose was a legend, an unreachable figure, someone who lived in a completely different reality from theirs. There were no scheduled tours, no concerts nearby, and even if there were, Emma couldn't leave the hospital. Her heart could barely keep her alive at rest, much less endure the excitement and exertion of a concert. "I'll do what I can, my love," was all he could say. And Emma, as always, smiled as if that were enough. That night, after Emma fell asleep with her headphones on listening to her favorite song for the umpteenth time, Robert stared at the hospital room ceiling. The desperation he had been containing for months finally caught up with him. He took out his phone and began to write. He didn't know exactly who to write to, but he knew he had to do something. He wrote about Emma. He wrote about her love for music, about how Sweet Child O' Mine had been her battle anthem during every painful procedure, every difficult night, every small victory. He wrote about the courage of a girl who had never given up, even when her own heart seemed determined to betray her. He wrote about his daughter's impossible dream and how he would give anything to make it come true. When he finished, he looked at the words on the screen. They sounded desperate, perhaps pathetic, but they were true. Every word was a piece of his shattered soul begging for a miracle. He posted the message on social media, tagged accounts related to Guns N' Roses, with Axl Rose, with anything that might have even the slightest connection. He didn't expect a response. He just needed to do something, anything, to feel like he hadn't given up. Days passed without change. Robert's post got a few likes from friends and family, words of encouragement that, though well-intentioned, didn't change anything. Emma remained in that bed, her heart kept failing, and the world kept spinning indifferent to their pain. But then, something began to happen. A user with several thousand followers shared Emma's story. Someone else picked it up, and then another person, and another. Like a wave that starts small but grows with each impulse. Emma's story began to spread across the internet. Guns N' Roses fans from all over the world started sharing the post, adding their own stories about how the band's music had helped them in difficult times. Some tagged band members directly, others wrote direct messages, even though they knew they probably would never be read. If you're enjoying this story and want to know what happened next, leave me a comment telling me which song gives you strength in difficult times. Robert didn't realize what was happening until a nurse named Patricia entered the room one morning with a strange expression on her face. "Mr. Martinez," she said almost breathlessly, "I think you should see this." She showed him her phone. Robert's post had been shared more than 50,000 times. Minor celebrities, local musicians, even some journalists were talking about Emma. The hashtag Emma's Last Wish was beginning to go viral. Robert's heart raced, but he tried not to get his hopes up too much. Going viral was one thing, but that didn't mean Axl Rose was going to see it. The man was notoriously private, unpredictable. He wasn't one to make public appearances unless it was strictly on his terms. However, somewhere in Los Angeles, in a mansion overlooking the hills, Axl Rose's phone wouldn't stop vibrating. His manager, Beta, an Argentine woman who had been with him for decades, entered his studio with determination. Axl was working on some tracks, lost in his musical world, but Beta wasn't one to beat around the bush. "You need to see this now," she said without preamble, placing a tablet in front of him. Axl, slightly annoyed by the interruption, was about to protest, but something in Beta's expression stopped him. He took the tablet and began to read. He read about Emma, about her broken heart, about Sweet Child O' Mine, about how she sang the song even when it was hard to breathe. He read about a desperate father and a brave girl who just wanted to feel the music one more time before her time ran out. Axl Rose, the man known for his volatile temper, his impossible demands, his relentless perfectionism, fell silent. His fingers scrolled through the screen, reading comment after comment from fans begging him to do something. When he finished reading, he took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "Where is she?" he finally asked. "At St. Mary General Hospital, about 2 hours from here," Beta responded, having already researched all the details. Axl nodded slowly. "Cancel whatever I have tomorrow." Beta smiled. She knew that look. Already did. The next day, Robert was reading Emma one of her favorite books when his phone began vibrating insistently. It was an unknown number. Normally, he didn't answer calls from numbers he didn't know, but something told him this time he should. "Hello?" he answered cautiously. "Mr. Martinez, this is Beta Lebeus. I work with Axl Rose. I need you to confirm the exact address of the hospital." Robert almost dropped the phone. His mind refused to process the words he had just heard. "Excuse me?" was all he could articulate. "Axl is on his way. He'll arrive in approximately 1 hour. We need to coordinate with the hospital to make sure everything is ready. Can you help me with that?" Tears began to run down Robert's face before he could stop them. "Is this for real? Is he really coming?" "Very real, Mr. Martinez. And he wants it to be a surprise for Emma, if possible." The next hour was controlled chaos. The hospital director was informed. Nurses rushed to make sure Emma's room was presentable. A small security team arrived discreetly to coordinate access. Robert, trembling with excitement and nerves, had to make up excuses to keep Emma distracted, which wasn't easy considering his daughter was incredibly perceptive. "Why is everyone acting weird?" Emma asked suspiciously, noticing the unusual coming and going outside her room. "I think there's an inspection or something," Robert lied awkwardly. "You know how these things are in hospitals." Emma didn't seem convinced, but she was too tired to insist. Her heart had been particularly irregular that day, and doctors had increased her medication to keep her stable. She closed her eyes, resting, with her headphones hanging from her neck. And then it happened. The door to the room opened gently. Robert turned around and his breath stopped. There stood Axl Rose, dressed in black jeans, a simple t-shirt, and a leather jacket. Without stage makeup, without production, without lights, he was simply a man in his 50s with surprisingly kind eyes. He carried an acoustic guitar in his hand. Behind him, Slash entered silently, his characteristic top hat on his head, and that calm smile that had captivated millions. They hadn't come alone. They had brought the magic with them. Emma, who had opened her eyes upon hearing the door, remained completely still. Her eyes opened wide. Her mouth formed a small O of surprise. For a moment, Robert feared her heart couldn't withstand the excitement. But then he saw something beautiful. His daughter's face lighting up with a pure happiness he hadn't seen in years. "Emma," Axl said with that unmistakable voice, slowly approaching the bed. "I heard you're a fan of a particular song." Emma couldn't speak. Tears ran freely down her cheeks, but her smile was so wide it seemed impossible. She nodded frantically, bringing her hands to her mouth to contain a sob of joy. Axl sat in the chair next to the bed, placing the guitar on his lap. Slash positioned himself nearby, taking out his own guitar with that casual movement that only years of practice can give. Axl continued, "How about we play it together? You and me, here now, just for you." Emma managed to find her voice, though it came out as a hoarse whisper. "Really? Really, little one? But I have one condition. You have to sing with me, deal?" Emma nodded so hard Robert feared she'd get dizzy. Axl smiled, that genuine smile he rarely showed in public, and looked at Slash. "Ready, brother?" Slash simply nodded, and his fingers began to slide over the strings. The opening riff of "Sweet Child O' Mine," that iconic riff that has made generations cry, filled the small hospital room. There were no amplifiers, no effects, just the pure sound of the acoustic guitar, and it was perfect. Axl began to sing, but not with the aggressive intensity of concerts. He sang softly, intimately, as if sharing a secret. And when he reached the chorus, he paused and pointed to Emma. With a trembling but clear voice, Emma sang, "Sweet child o' mine, sweet love of mine." The nurses who had gathered discreetly outside the room were crying. Robert's face was soaked with tears. Even the musicians seemed moved. Emma's voice was weak, fractured by illness and emotion, but it was the most beautiful thing anyone in that room had ever heard. When the song ended, the silence that followed was sacred. Axl set the guitar aside and moved closer to Emma. "You know what, little one? I've been singing that song for years, thousands of times, but never has it meant as much as it does now. Thank you for reminding me why I do this." Emma, exhausted but radiant, managed to whisper, "Thank you for coming. I don't know how, but I always knew you would." Axl stayed at the hospital for hours. He didn't take photos for social media. He didn't make public statements. He simply stayed, talking with Emma about music, about dreams, about life. He told her stories from the road, about legendary concerts, about moments when he himself had wanted to give up, but music had saved him. He signed his acoustic guitar and gave it to her. "For when you're better and want to learn to play it for real," he said, though they both knew the unspoken truth behind those words. Slash drew his famous logo for Emma on a new t-shirt. He taught her some basic chords on the guitar, guiding her small, weak fingers over the strings. "You have a good ear," he said with genuine impression. "That can't be taught. You're born with that." When it was finally time to leave, Axl leaned in and kissed Emma's forehead. "You're the strongest fighter I've ever met," he whispered. "Much stronger than me. Never forget that." Emma, almost asleep from exhaustion and medication, murmured, "I love you, Axl. Thank you for the music." "I love you too, little one. And thank you for reminding me what's important." The following days were strange. The story of Axl's visit leaked, of course. Guns N' Roses fans flooded social media with messages of love and admiration. Some criticized that there were no photos, but others defended the privacy of that sacred moment. Axl never made public comments about it, keeping it as something personal, something that belonged only to Emma and those who were there. Emma lived 3 more weeks after that visit, 3 weeks in which she constantly talked about that day, reliving every detail, every word, every note. The guitar Axl gave her never left her bed. She held it while she slept, as if it were a talisman that could keep the darkness away. In her final days, when speaking became difficult and breathing was a battle her body was losing, Emma still hummed, "Sweet child o' mine." The nurses heard her through the monitors, that weak but persistent melody that refused to fade. Robert was by her side when Emma finally closed her eyes for the last time. There was no drama, no cinematic scenes, simply one last soft breath and then silence. But on her face, there was peace, a small, calm smile that said she was leaving satisfied, that she had lived her dream, that she had been seen and loved. Emma's funeral was small, intimate, but in a corner of the room, without announcing himself, without making a fuss, was Axl Rose. He wore a black suit, dark glasses, and remained silent throughout the entire ceremony. When he approached the coffin, he placed a rose on it and whispered something that only Emma, wherever she was, could hear. Afterward, he approached Robert. "She changed something in me," he said simply. "I don't know what exactly, but she did. And I want to do something to make sure her light keeps shining." 2 months later, during a massive concert at Madison Square Garden, Axl Rose did something no one expected. Before playing Sweet Child O' Mine, he approached the microphone. "This song," he told the roaring crowd, "I've sung it millions of times, but recently I sang it with someone very special. A girl named Emma, who taught me more about courage and strength in one afternoon than I learned in my entire life. She's no longer with us, but her spirit is here. This is for you, little Emma." The song that followed was different. Axl sang with a raw emotion the audience hadn't witnessed before. And when he reached the chorus, thousands of voices joined in, singing not just for themselves, but for a 9-year-old girl who loved music until her last breath. Robert, who was in the crowd by personal invitation from the band, cried openly. But they weren't tears only of sadness. They were tears of gratitude, of wonder, of the certainty that his daughter had left a mark on the world, that her story mattered, that her love for music had touched even the man who created it. The story of Emma and Axl became legend among Guns N' Roses fans, not because of sensationalism, but because of what it represented, the real connection between art and audience, between musician and fan, between two souls who met at just the right moment. It reminded everyone that behind the giant stages and world tours, music has always been about human connection, about touching lives, about being the light in someone's darkness. Emma didn't live to grow up, to go to concerts, to learn to play the guitar Axl gave her. But she lived fully in the days she had. She lived loved, she lived heard, and she lived knowing that her favorite song, sung by her hero, was just for her. And in the end, isn't that what we all seek? To be seen, to be important, to leave a mark however small in this vast universe. Emma achieved it in 9 years, more than many do in a lifetime. If you made it this far and this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel for more stories that will make you feel